Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big roster rumours emerged yesterday that the Carolina Royal Ravens are potentially eyeing up a roster change replacing Real on their starting team. This rumour though lasted all of about 2 minutes before Clayster came up with his response saying that actually this is not the case, and at least for the time being, Ravens are going to stick with their roster into the new year. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. The team packs are officially out as well. Lots of teams did some pretty good announcement stuff for this. Josh especially did a pretty cool job on the LA Thieves side. I thought this was particularly good as well. But yeah, the team bundles, of course, officially now in the game. Back in the day, you can definitely argue that, well, the camos were more affordable or whatever you want to say. And to be fair, for the last few years, it's been all rather similar to what they've done a lot of the time. I will say that some of these are pretty nice this time around. I actually really like the Ravens one, as much as, you know, it's unfortunate from a European fan's perspective there's no more London team. I do think the rebrand to the blue is actually really rather nice. So these are the 12 team packs that are now in the game. It's always a question, right? Why wouldn't they do something like this ahead of the World Championship to do the crowdfunding or whatever? You know, sure, some of the money from this actually goes to the teams, which of course it well should. I don't really know how much of it goes back to the teams. These are one of the ways the teams can actually make some money, and this is the benefit of having esports when, you know, it's not like esports fans don't spend money on certain things. They do. It's just about making the products worthwhile. This, for example, is the Toronto one. These are all pretty nice, to be fair. There's a few good ones. This is the Ravens one. You've got the FaZe one and all this stuff. So, okay, nowadays you get the outfit, you get the camo, you get all sorts of stuff, and it's pretty good. Now, you can argue the camo isn't great. I think OpTic's charm actually is pretty cool here as well. Maybe they could have done a better job on the camo. I know people always talk about that. I did get roasted a bit for this tweet. Well, I knew that I was going to get roasted a bit, but I couldn't turn up the opportunity to do another Black Ops 3 glaze. I thought, why not? I'll go for it. But these were the camos that I was mentioning for you guys the other day. This is the Cloud9 one. This, you know, this is obviously a very popular one at the time. This was the Splice. And sure, at the time, you didn't get all the outfits for all the teams, but back then, I mean, as you guys can see here, there was a CDL team, or CWL as it was back then, team back for NA, EU, ANZ, and ANZ, and then 500 COD points per one. And it wasn't even, you have to pay like, what is it now, $12.99 for one of these packs, and that will get you one of these for whatever team you want to have, and that's like $11.99 for just one type thing. Whereas back in the day, and it's not like in Black Ops 3 and other games, they didn't have other ways to get your money because, you know, supply drops were a big deal. I didn't really spend any money, I don't think, on supply drops, to be fair, but, you know, they were very popular, and they were rinsing the cash at the time, so it's not like back then they were like way more, oh yeah, well, you know, we really like our player base, so we're not going to charge them so much money. It's not necessarily that way, but I did think that the fact that it was 500 COD points to get each of the packs, and in each of the packs you would get the Cloud9, the Elevate, the OpTic, the FaZe, the Rise, the Envy skin for all of the weapons in the game. Some of them were really nice, and at least they actually had the team logo on. Now, to be fair, I think it is cool nowadays that the teams themselves get to design them, but even then, sometimes they do the best job. I mean, if we just have a look at this video here, like OpTic's one, for example, I mean, look, some of these skins, they're nice, but you know, they don't necessarily have the team logo on. Okay, the Vegas one does. There's some good ones in here. It's good the teams get to design them. I think we've taken some positive steps over the last few years, but there's also some things that I would kind of bring back. But last night, the big tournament that concluded was the FaZe Black Challengers tournament, which really should have been done by the CDL, but we know how it is. The organizations themselves, certain teams will ever have to come up with ways to actually do this themselves, and well, FaZe Black did so. Now, the funny thing is that FaZe Black themselves are actually the best challengers team right now. So they ended up winning their own event, which is, you know, there was nothing especially in this from like a competitive integrity standpoint, and obviously they did a good job putting it on in the first place. It went down to the wire. aBeZy especially was making some great plays. This was a definitely notable one here on the final hard point over on Invasion. Difficult hill to break, famously so. Gets a 3-piece, gets the break in, they win the map, and yeah, eventually they go on to win the grand finals. It was really competitive actually between their team and Fellow's roster. I think it was 7 maps in the grand finals. It finished like when I was waking up my time, so it was a late night one, as it quite often is. But yeah, awesome to see the CDL can't get their act together on the challenger side. Thankfully, you know, teams and everything are going to step up to deliver the goods. So the grand final was Fellow's team, as we'll see in a second, versus aBeZy's boys, and they get the victory in the end. Terminal search and destroy. aBeZy drops like 18 kills or something, and aBeZy was, you know, massively standout player here of the series, but so was for sure Kremp as well, his teammate. Between them, they dropped an absurd amount of kills, actually, and exceed aBeZy, Kremp, and Brack effectively in some ways, the first Challenger champions in North America of the season. In Europe, of course, it's that team with Bance and Nasty and Hixie and Beans. In North America, these are basically the guys to beat right now. And of course, if you are looking for a roster change for your CDL team, this is probably where you look first. And that's certainly going to be relevant here in a second. These some of the numbers, by the way, and I will just point out the hill time numbers here from aBeZy, because not to say anything bad on that front, but like, if you are going to make a change for Real, we'll discuss in a second, he gets a lot of the hill time for Ravens, so you kind of need a player that can also do that job. But these were the overall numbers. Exceed with a 0.9 over the 7 maps of this series. 2 Real had a more difficult time, 0.8 here, Yuli, fellow Dave Paddy, and then of course Kremp had a 1.3, Brack had a 1.2, but nowhere near as many kills as Seam. So yeah, definitely right now, those are 2 standout players on the Challenger side. Couple of words on Fellow as well quickly, just because there's been some talk about this. Of all the veteran players that are really left in the league, or even out of the league, it's not so clear where you go to find some leadership if that's what your team requires. Because, you know, really, of all the veteran guys, you've got guys like Accuracy, Slasher, Clayster, veteran main AR type guys. And, you know, really out of those 3, Slasher's the one that I have most confidence in will, you know, drop some great numbers over the course of a season. And if you can't get Slasher, then, well, who do you get? Let's say you're Thieves, and you might be struggling for leadership or whatever the case is. We don't really know what's going on at Thieves at the moment behind the scenes, but there's been some rumours that it might not last over there forever, and the leadership has been a question on that roster in terms of the chemistry of their AR duo. So I know there's been some talk about Fellow, especially given his history with Ghosty, whether potentially like a Fellow Ghosty thing could work, as what Fellow came into Florida and he did a pretty decent job putting some things together over there again. So I definitely think there's an option for some of these Challenger guys, especially a guy like Fellow, to get back into the league if there's certain teams that require that type of player, which may or not be the case for the moment. But, well, the rumour has it the roster changes are going down. I've expected some changes for a little while. I'm pretty sure that Mohawk as well confirmed that he's a free agent right now in the Challenger side last night. But also Boston Breach Academy. These guys who, well, Doug's team, of course, they lost pretty emphatically in the first day of the tournament. Apparently, Craze is now going to be gone. Interesting in the sense that, you know, it seemed like a pretty decent player, but we've seen that Doug has brought up many a talented youngster rookie over the last couple of years, and maybe Craze doesn't, you know, he doesn't think he fits the bill or whatever the case is. So Craze is gone, Yeez is going to be coming in, and apparently they're just looking for a dynamic shift in the team, because Craze does seem like a talented player, but yeah, they're clearly not happy with the way things are presently going. But it's not just potentially Challenger teams looking to make moves. It was rumoured to be happening in the CDL as well. So the Stocksman comes out with this. I find it funny that this guy can't catch a break, right? Even when he actually does try and do a leak, he just gets clowned on. But it is his fault because he didn't have the full story to put across. So he reveals this last night. The Ravens are looking to replace Real. While not finalised, several players are currently being targeted as potential options, and also rumours going around that maybe, you know, they're scrimming without Real, are they trying alternatives just to see what could potentially work there. Now, on the surface, this is like, wow, pretty surprising, right? In the sense that they had plenty of time over Christmas, over the New Year's, even pre-Christmas, if they wanted to make a move, to discuss and execute moves then. But now we're like a few days before the start of the matches again, with 2 more weeks of qualifiers and then the major, and now you're going to make a change, especially when, you know, only a one-man change, because if I was absolutely forced to make a one-man move, it probably wouldn't be Real that I would replace right now. I think that Real has generally been more impactful than GodRx has so far, but and I also think that there's probably better, you know, maybe more replacements out there for GodRx than Real at the moment. But there's questions about Real's playstyle as well, because people have said, okay, maybe you put him on the flex role, is that going to suit him better? I think there's questions about that, and whether, you know, he's best suited to what he's currently had to do on the team, because we look at some of the numbers here for Ravens in a second. This guy basically has to do all the objective work, but still, by the numbers, has he been especially impressive? Not necessarily, right? And given the fact that there are plenty of SMG players, we've just seen the likes of Kremp and Seam and, you know, let's say Exceed and those type of guys on that FaZe Mac team do very well, you can understand why they might consider some sort of option. But it's just the timing would feel odd on this one, that they've kind of waited the New Year period, they've presumably started scrims again over the last few days, and now they're deciding wanting to blow it up. Like, you know, they had all the information they needed if they wanted to blow it up because they got absolutely giga-slabbed by, you know, Toronto and OpTic back-to-back at the end of last year. They've won a series against Vegas, but arguably they were quite lucky to have been given the opportunity to do so. Vegas threw a fair few rounds in that situation. Otherwise, they might be 0-4. They've got 10 points on the board, but, you know, they're not doing so well, and there was a fair bit of talk in the community at the end of last year that maybe Ravens are the worst team in the league right now, and they were arguably the most likely to make a change. But turns out this is not the case, because as Clay says, wrong. We've been plan Bing and seeing if we could find a replacement for this weekend's matches. Jose is in the last steps of his visa process and could get approved by this weekend. We're just making sure that we have a fail-safe. So this was the thing with Real, right? And it's, again, this is the problem with Ravens. We know that we clown Vegas, we clown Gorillas, but Ravens genuinely have had the most visa issues of any team over the last few years. I don't know what is going on in that department behind the scenes, but they cannot get their act together. Every single year, they have some sort of visa problems. It's actually outrageous how bad they are at this type of stuff. So I feel horrible for Real because he's been, well, at the start of the season, right, he was playing from Spain, right? He's playing from EU servers. Then for the matches in December, he was in Toronto, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure he went to Toronto, but maybe he can't go back there again. I don't know. So they need to get his visa sorted. Maybe it will be sorted by this weekend, but knowing Ravens, it probably won't be. So Clay says that, sure, they have been looking at options for Real, but this is not a permanent idea. This is merely, we've been looking at players that we can get potentially for this weekend's games if he can't get there in time. And probably he won't be there in time. So, you know, all we want to say about this, potentially Real will be back in time, but if he can't be, then Ravens quite possibly will play this weekend with a different player. And then it does raise the question that, okay, well, if that player comes in and fries and they look better, then does that become a permanent change? I don't know, but it's just a very unfortunate situation. But Clay says, look, we're not considering moving out Real for no good reason. It's more that this is a plan B situation we have to execute at the moment. And definitely that makes more sense than the initial explanation, just because look at Real's numbers compared to, I'm not going to show KD's because we know that's going to be ugly apart from Gwyn, but this is hill time per map. Real has like 85 seconds. Nobody else gets any time. I mean, it's actually kind of embarrassing. But if you get rid of Real, it's like, well, who's getting your hill time? And also who's getting your first blood? Because this is first blood rate. It's Real is trying to do it all in there as well. So sure, his numbers might not be great, but he's also doing a big job. Of course, there are people understandably saying, look, you want to report on us making a change, and then you don't really have the full story about it. Not a great look. But if you guys were Ravens, who would you be targeting, right? I mean, they begin, I think it's Sunday, they play a game this weekend. That's their first, I think maybe their only match of the weekend is against Rocker on the Sunday. So they need to get either Real can arrive by then, maybe it will get approved by the weekends, but you know, that might be a bit of a tall order. So instead, they potentially have been trialing other players, or at least looking at other players, maybe in scrims or not in scrims over the last couple of days. And I mean, look, maybe some of the players they were going to trial, or at least think about, were in that Challengers tournament doing very well. I mean, you've got to look at that FaZe Black team. Asim and Clay have a relationship before. Whether it's a good one or not, that's another question. But then also on that roster, Asim isn't the one getting the hill time, and you can argue that maybe there's, you know, Kremp or something like that could be a good replacement for a matchup. In the same way that Thieves, last year they brought in briefly Capsidal right to their roster when they needed a short-term replacement, and then he proved to be good and then got a spot elsewhere in the league going forward. But if you're Real, I guess you'll be somewhat understandably concerned that maybe if somebody else comes in this weekend and does well, then, you know, will you return to the team for the major? I don't know. That's of course assuming that Ravens can actually sort this visa stuff out, because it's never been good for this organization. There's also a couple of other options, of course, on other teams, such as Temp's roster. Of course, this is the team of TJ, Temp, Spartan, Prolute. So they played a set of scrims against Thieves, actually. They split the two controls that CDL Skins saw. Kind of funny, really, that Temp was kind of roasting Ronnie the other day for saying, oh, why don't you post all the maps? And then he misses the first 3 maps because, you know, he wasn't watching the stream or whatever. Post the last 2 where they lost. But actually, it did turn out that Houston did win map 1 and 2, lost map 3. So pretty close maps, apparently. But over the hard points, apparently it was 3 to Los Angeles Thieves, 2 to the Spartans. So maybe there's still something in that as well. But very much interested in your perspective on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.